going on, guys? This is podcast number 18. Our guest today is Eric Matthews. I put down on my notes. I had some friends' feedback say, "Hey, you need to do a better job of introducing the guests." And so I wrote down icebreaker on my list here. And the ultimate icebreaker in my mind is asking you how many times people asked you about Boy Meets World and Eric Matthews.
Oh, man. The last time I kept count was back in college, and I was around 3,429. And that's been a solid 10 years ago. So, I mean, there's got to be at least another 2,000 there somewhere. So, I'm going to say over 5,000.
Yeah, and David had a personal question. He wanted to know if you had your own personal Feeney call because of Eric Matthews.
I've tried, but my voice is way too deep in baritone. It just sounds weird, and it's like a dead cat. Or a dying cat, excuse me.
I'm pretty sure with you having the exact count and actually trying the Feeney call, I mean, I think we just hit a home run here in the icebreaker.
I think so.
So this is Eric Matthews. Your current job role is
unemployed.
Okay, your past one was
a
sports information director. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The last year and a half, I have been the sports information director at Kentucky State University.
Okay.
And that has recently changed. And for the next 3 or 4 days, I am unemployed.
Gotcha.
But that will change by the end of the week.
That's because of something exciting that's happened in your life. And before we get to that, maybe talk everybody through like what you studied in college, your path that's led you to this point.
Ooh, how much time you got?
Well, just a synopsis. We need the Cliff Notes version.
Okay, Cliff Notes version. When I was in high school, when you and I were kids, and I was probably around 15, 16 years old.
Give yourself more credit. I'm older than you, so.
Well, not much. What, 45?
Yeah, 50.
When I was in high school, when you and I were kids, I got into radio. And that was a passion of mine, was sports radio, ESPN, the sports center anchors were the thing, and I love sports talk radio, and I got into it at an early age. I did that and went to college at Western Kentucky University and got a bachelor's degree in broadcasting. And I did radio, start of high school into college.
So when you started high school, when you started doing the radio, were you doing like the radio announcement of football games or basketball games? I don't know a lot of this information either, so.
No problem. When we were younger, there was a local station in Winchester called WYAH.
Yeah, I remember listening to the actual football calls and stuff on it.
And at the time, they had started doing GRC football and basketball, and I went to them as a 15, 16-year-old little loudmouth pudgy kid and said, I want to start doing GRC baseball. And that happened. I started doing radio for GRC baseball and started doing a Saturday morning talk show that talked about high school athletics, mostly on GRC. We had coaches and players on for interviews, and then the last 30 minutes, I talked about, national sports topics. Because that's what I wanted to do. And I was like, what better way?
So you got your chops really early in life then?
Like 15, 16.
Were the people skeptical when you came in? Were they like, whoa, pump the brakes, kid? Or were they accepting of it and be like, once they talked with you and everything like that and saw... how I'm sure you're probably pretty excited about it and you had the drive to do it. Were they just like, here you go, here's the keys?
There was one guy in particular. Now, background information. WIH was a Christian station. And so whenever a high school kid walks in there, they're like, what's he going to say?
Right.
Or what's he going to do?
Right.
So there was one cat that wasn't my biggest fan, but there was one dude that name was Steve Curtis. And he was like, hey, this is an opportunity. Why not? And and that helps a lot of people. It helps a lot of kids. Is whenever you have someone who says, "I'm sure you're going to suck at this, but we're going to give you an opportunity to kind of figure it out."
Right.
And that's kind of what Steve did. And for 2 years, I did that. I did the Saturday morning talk show. I did high school baseball. I subbed in for high school basketball every once in a while, and just kind of got the feeling and kind of got comfortable being on the air. I wasn't scared to begin with, but I got comfortable and confident.
Gotcha.
And that was the big thing. Getting that confidence was huge.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what led me to get into college and why I studied broadcasting for 4 years at WKU.
Sweet. And so when you transitioned to WKU and you were doing your studying and broadcasting, things like that, did you continue on with the radio stuff?
I did. I think it was my second year, started my second year at Western. I'd already had a year under my belt and school-wise. I worked for a small on-campus station, but there was an ESPN affiliate there in Bowling Green that had opening for producer. Got in on that, started doing that, intern. Got involved, and before you know it, I was on the air. I was doing high school football. I was doing high school basketball. I started doing talk shows there in Bowling Green, much larger market. It subbed into Nashville on occasions, and it kind of created more work in the Nashville area, the Bowling Green area. And for 3 years, I was Eric the Red down in Bowling Green.
I remember those days.
I remember them too, and occasionally I still get called that, which throws me for a loop. But that was kind of who I was all through college. I was not a very good student. I mean, I wasn't bad. I was like, mid-level.
Right.
But I was always one of those cats that I kind of went at my own pace.
Right.
And did things the way that I thought was the best way to do it for me.
Yeah, and also I'm sure that your motivations for school, like most kids, weren't as high as your motivation for the actual broadcasting part itself. So I'm sure that the work that you put in there was probably much more work than you put in college.
I mean, I was one of those guys that I hated going to math class. I hated going.
I hate thinking about it.
Exactly, but I hate doing that. But I would also work a 16-hour day covering a college football game.
It's crazy.
I mean, that's just the way I was. I mean, I remember. I mean, this is going way back. Was I would do sometimes 3 shows a day, and by the time I got to the dorm room, I was out, done, call it. But that's kind of how I was wired, because I was so determined to get better, and I wanted to do it, and I wanted to learn and go through all that. But at the same time, I wasn't a standout student.
It seems to be the whole 16-hour days seems to be like the media life. Like, you hear that a lot from, a lot of the people that are in sports radio, a lot of the coaches that are in sports. So it just seems to go with the sports thing. And really, you're making me look bad, because I complain a lot. Because I didn't finish college, and I complained a lot about having a full-time job and not finishing college. And now I just look silly because you had a 16-hour day and we're doing class.
I mean, it kind of came with the territory, Kellen. I mean, it's just one of those things where you kind of get involved and you're like, wow, I've worked 16 hours today and I got class tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, it just kind of came with the territory, and that is the kind of life you kind of went into, because what people don't realize when it comes to sports broadcasting is your job is everybody else's enjoyment.
Right.
And so in order for it to be enjoyed, it has to be good. If it's not good, then nobody's going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, you kind of march to the beat of your own drum, and having the Eric the Red moniker and all that stuff, that's your path, and that's what separates you from all the other guys, because I'm sure it's a pretty cutthroat business.
Yeah, we'll get into more of that a little bit later, because I got stories on that. But yeah, I mean, it really is. It's every man for himself, and you meet some cool people, you meet some great people, but you also meet. And can we curse on this?
Yes, absolutely.
You meet some fucking assholes.
Yeah,
and it's the way it goes sometimes.
Right.
But like I said, we'll get into that. We'll get a little more into it if you want.
So you do your 4 years of time. Let's call it time at WKU, which I'm sure you had some good times.
Oh, I loved it there.
And so did you go straight from those 4 years to a position? Because I know that you worked in some Lexington media stuff. Did you come back, or did you stay in Bowling Green for a while?
When I got done with school, I kind of still worked at the station for a few months, and I made an adult decision at 22 that I didn't want to get stuck there. I wanted to move on, and I moved back to the Winchester area in Lexington, and I was back working the same job I worked when I was 16 years old. I was working at the YMCA, and this is where things get fun, is I started cold calling random people in the business that I've never met before.
That's awesome.
Of just saying, hey, I'm interested. Can you help me? Just basically cold calling and networking with people. And that led to an opportunity at EKU, Eastern Kentucky University. And I met a guy there named was Simon Gray. And Simon was the assistant athletic director there at the time that oversaw fundraising and media relations and things of that nature. He's like, hey, great to talk to you, great to meet you, but I don't got anything for you. But let's stay in contact. Cool, gotcha.
Yeah.
And I did that. And what's funny is how that one little tidbit has led to all his other stuff, but we'll get into that later. But he called me
So you're just networking.
Just networking. Every university in Kentucky, I hit them up. No matter Division I, Division II, 3, NAI, I hit them up. And he was one of the guys that was willing to talk. And 3 months later, he called me and told me that the guy who was doing play-by-play for women's basketball, EKU, fell off a ladder hanging Christmas decorations. Are you interested in subbing in? Yeah. So I was doing Division I women's basketball at 22-23 at EKU.
That's awesome.
Traveling and doing all that, and just kind of got my first taste of college athletics in that way of doing things. But I knew it was going to run out eventually.
Right.
And it did. And
how much, before we step away from that, how much prep time goes into that? Because I don't think a lot of people know, like, the amount of, knowing the players' names, knowing their tendencies, all these things that I'm sure that you probably got familiarized with. So how much prep did you find yourself doing before one of those games?
I don't know if I can give you an accurate answer, and here's the reason why. And this is not toot my own horn. It was just the reputation I got. I was a prep monster. I mean, if we had a game on Saturday, I start prepping on Monday. And a little bit at a time, here and there, taking handwritten notes, making my own charts, all these different stuff to be prepared. And because you never know what could happen. And because when you're doing that, you take that idea of you don't know what's going to happen. For instance, when I was at EKU, we were at Tennessee Martin. And there was a big storm going on. And they had a severe thunderstorm warning, had cleared the gym.
Wow.
So you had all that dead time. And you got to figure out, what am I talking about? Because there's not a game going on.
Wow.
And so, like, being a prep monster, like, I have something to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's basically what ended up happening. But and that's just one of many stories. But
I think it's a great example.
Yeah. But I did that a lot. I was always prepared. I was always made sure I knew more than I had to know, because you never know what's going to happen. So there's some guys that they start the night before. There are some guys that start 2 weeks in advance for an upcoming series, all these different things. But there is a lot of time, because that confidence that you get on the air is because of all the stuff that you're doing behind the scenes to make sure you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And everybody's level of comfort is different depending on how much time they've been in the business to just what they feel like should be portrayed to an audience that's listening or watching.
Gotcha. And I mean, you're killing it. These descriptions are always the things that I've wondered about when I sit down and watch it. And I've never got to talk with anybody in the media like this at this level before. And it's awesome that you're able to bring that to life and to show why the prep and everything went into it. So how much downtime did you have in that storm?
I think it came out to an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh.
That we had. And I mean, like, that happened so many times when I was doing high school football, high school baseball, college baseball. It's just, it happens. And you tell funny stories. You talk about interesting topics. You got to be careful sometimes, because there's some things people don't want to hear on a sports broadcast.
For sure.
But it kind of came with the territory. But there are times, I'll give you a quick story. This is probably one of the worst things that I had to put up with. Was I was doing high school football in Bowling Green. And we went up to a school in Louisville. And then their press box was full. This is like the beginning of November.
Oh my gosh.
It is raining, spitting snow, so it's like 33, 31 degrees, somewhere in there, so it's right on that line. And I'm up on the top of the bleachers with parents around me, with a radio equipment set inside a trash bag so it doesn't get wet, and I'm fiddling with knobs where I can't see them. And the guy who's calling the game with me, it's his first game ever calling as a color commentator. And we had to get there a couple hours early, set up a tent up in the stands that ended up breaking during the broadcast. So I'm sitting there trying to do all this other stuff. I have parents who have pity on me, bringing me hot cocoa. I'm standing up in the bleachers with an umbrella because the tent broke, and just trying my best to call a game. And that happens more often than not when you first get into the business, because those elements, nobody thinks about that. And you're there to do a job. You're there to give it the best that you have. And sometimes when it's not perfect, you have to either adjust or say, I'm done. And I never said I'm done.
Right.
I always said, we're going to get through this. We're going to make this happen. Exactly. And that's just what you had to do. And so that night, EKU, I mean, it was about a solid hour and a half of this severe thunderstorm, and you're throwing it back and forth to the studio, and you're just trying to figure out, okay, how do we get through this? And it happens more often than you want to admit or hope so.
And obviously those type situations, like, sitting in the blowing tin in the snow up in Louisville, or going back to the delay from the thunderstorm. That obviously makes you a better broadcaster, because I'm sure when you're back to calling the games, you're like, this is cake.
Yeah, I mean, that's really how it comes down to, is you're like, well, this is nothing compared to
what we just had
what we had 2 weeks ago.
Hey, David, does it make you feel better about our setup, knowing that he's had it worse than just the dining room setup here? So that's a good thing as well. So you get your opportunity, KU, with the women's basketball. How long does that last? I mean, ultimately, I assume that the gentleman came back from his fall and
just 3 months.
Just
January, February, into March, and that was it.
Okay.
I got a taste of it.
Well, yeah, and that's I mean, just that situation that you just gave right there shows why getting a taste of it is so important, because it's obviously a different. I assume it's probably a different level calling or high school football to Division I. I mean,
huge difference.
Yeah, big difference in production and everything. I would assume. So where did you go from there? Because in my opinion, you're not back to square one. You're obviously a lot better than you were 3 months before that. You've got even more chops now, and you're ready to move on to the next thing. I know that you did a lot of high school games here because I heard you on the radio. So what was next?
Well, this is where things get interesting. I took that and I networked with a friend of mine at WKU who was the voice of the Hilltoppers, Randy Lee. And Randy helped me land a gig at IMG College. IMG College is this big conglomerate talent agency, for the most part, that has 3 network sites. They have one in Orlando, Florida, they have one in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they have one up in New York City. And all 3 satellite sites are for different reasons. The one I went to was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which was for broadcasting. And IMG at the time, that's more now, but at the time, held over 80 different college contracts for broadcasting. So they would bring in all these guys who had aspirations to be involved in college athletics, either in radio or television, and put them all in one big room they call a bullpen, and you were in different cubicles. And you were the producer and host for a single broadcast for college football, college basketball. So I'm there. I moved to North Carolina, and I am the studio host and the producer for Marshall, which was, in my opinion, huge.
Yeah.
And so my contract was with Conference USA and with the Sun Belt. So I was on air with Marshall, but I also worked with Tulane, East Carolina, Houston, and a few other different schools, just because everything was in-house.
All pretty big household names.
Oh, huge. I mean, case in point, the quarterback at Houston when I was there was Case Keenum.
There you go.
There you go.
Best college quarterback of all time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's when he made his name, when he came back from the ACL tear and all that fun stuff. But I was there during that. And so that's kind of what I did, was I was the one who would connect with the on-site play-by-play people. I threw in a break. I did a pregame show, halftime show, postgame show. I'm sitting there with all these different sounds in my head and just basically trying to make sure everything ran as smooth as possible. Unfortunately, I got some bad luck when I was there, and upon moving down there, I ended up getting hurt.
Oh, no.
And not to get technical, but I had an inflamed sciatic nerve in my right.
Very painful.
Oh, God.
I've been there.
Yeah, it's awful. And it took me a little while to bounce back. Like, it took me a solid 4 months before I could really walk.
I'm speaking your language now because I'm sure you probably did the rehab and all that stuff. And I mean, I've been there and it sucks.
Oh, it's awful.
It sucks just sitting down. I mean, even thinking about it sucks.
Oh, yeah. And I went through that, and I said, this is where things get interesting. This is where bad luck comes in. Was I got hurt, I'm there 2-3 weeks, and then boom, that happens. And as you know, in order to really get up and move around, like, you're on a painkiller. You pretty much throughout the day, you're on something to help yourself get around. And so you take painkillers plus sit in a cubicle for 8-9 hours.
Not good.
Not good. Your speech starts slurring.
Yeah.
You're uncomfortable. You're sitting there sweating because you're uncomfortable, and you're taking something to help get you to kind of calm down because you're in pain. And I tanked. I mean, it was the first time in really in my life where I really failed at something that I really put my mind to. And as much as I tried to get help when I was down there, like going, hey, this is my situation. Can I get some help? Like, can I get some kind of flexibility? They're like, no, dude, like, figure it out on your own. And I tried, and Didn't happen. And I'm there 2 months. I had moved to North Carolina. I'm there 2 to 3 months. A good friend of mine passed away back here in Winchester. And I'm going through all this. I get fired.
Yeah.
They fire me for my assignment, but they retain my contract. So essentially, I lost all my money that I thought I was going to get, that I budgeted for within Conference USA and the Sun Belt. And they're like, well, we really don't have anything for you, but whenever something opens up, we'll give it to you. So I'm miserable. I'm hurt. I can barely get around. I'm alone. And I'm trying to get back involved in it, and I'm trying to get better, and which did open up a few small doors. When it was all said and done, I worked for all those teams I said. I also worked for Duke, Florida State, a few other broadcasts while I was down there. And I think when it was all said and done, I was on air over a 6-month, 7-month span in 18 different states, which is kind of cool to say.
Right.
But it didn't really help much because I wasn't making hardly any money. So you go through all that, and by the time we get to March, I'm defeated, man. I didn't want to be there anymore. I had gotten better. I was okay. I wasn't hindered by the injury, but I didn't want to be there. They offered me a contract renewal, and I said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm out. And I called a buddy of mine, and he came down there, and he got me, and I came back home, and that was square one. I was right back to it. And I remember sitting in my buddy's parents' place. He had went through kind of the same thing where he was going through an issue where he was going after a job that he wanted. Things didn't work out. More or less, he kind of got screwed over. And I remember sitting there, and I said to him, I was like, and this is about a month after everything kind of happened. I had been back, and I looked at him and I said, you and I both were so afraid growing up at failing at anything.
Yeah.
Like, we always told each other, like, I'm not going to fail. That failing's not an option. Well, there's no better way to describe what we just went through than we both failed. And honestly, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It happens. And it was kind of, I reference that conversation with him as often as I can.
It's kind of like your moment of clarity.
It really was. And so I just kind of sat there and figured it out for the next few weeks, month or so. I was back at that same job, work at the Winchester YMCA, just trying to do something.
That's so funny that you worked there because that was my first job.
Yeah, for a lot of us, it was our first job. And so I went back there. Fortunately, what happened was, again, this is where things start to kind of go in a general direction here, is there was a job opening as a program director at ESPN Radio in Lexington.
Yeah.
And when I was leaving North Carolina, this job came open. I applied for it. My resume looks pretty good. So they called me in and said, hey, we want to talk to you. I walk in the door, and they looked at me and go, oh, didn't realize you were that young. I'm 25.
Right.
25, 26. And, I'm program director of ESPN Radio in Lexington. They kind of look at you and go,
It automatically puts in their head that you're not just by the way you look when you walk in. Because that happens to me all the
I've
time.
dealt with it.
Ever since I got out of college.
I was the youngest person to my knowledge, to ever get the position that I had with the company I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can completely relate to it as well.
And that's pretty much what ended up happening. And I didn't get it. They were like, thanks, but no thanks. Well, he didn't even say that. He just never returned my phone calls.
Yeah.
And I kept on him. His name was Charlie Kendall. Charlie and I are cool now, best of friends and everything else when that happened, because Charlie was one of those guys who he had a long 50-year radio career.
Right.
And was well established in the business and everything else. But I kept calling, I kept emailing, and it just nothing came out of it over the next 3 weeks. And I said, the hell with it. I'm going to show up. So I came back, showed up, and I said, can I talk to Charlie? And they're like, yeah, who are you? And I said, my name's Eric Matthews. I applied for a job. I haven't heard from him. I just want to talk to him for just a moment. Charlie comes from the back, looks at me and goes, oh, yeah, we're not interested in you anymore. Cool. Can I keep in contact? Yeah, sure. And he walks away. So
It's pretty blunt.
yeah, pretty blunt, which was fine.
He didn't call security.
Exactly. but I mean, it was fine. That's all I wanted was like, hey, not interested anymore. Cool, just tell me.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I walked away. So, I'm kind of more or less, I'm defeated, going, well, what am I going to do now? I'm sitting there going, I'm going to work at Amazon. I'm going to work at this place or whatever
Toyota.
else. Toyota, whatever. It just, I was like, I don't want to do that right now with my life. I still want to do this.
Right. Still chasing the dream.
Exactly. And randomly one afternoon, I'm working at the pool at the Y, and I just emailed Charlie, hey, you talked about wanting to do high school sports. Still interested? So am I. If you need anything, call me. He calls me about 2 days later. And he's like, hey, I got your email. Come and talk to me. All right. Came and talked to him. He goes, I don't have anything for you, but there's a sales position open on the sports side. Are you interested? And I said, sure. Whatever gets my foot in the door. Don't care.
Yeah.
And I took it. And I took that job, and I admired my boss, but sales was not for me.
Right.
I kind of realized that about 2-3 months into it, and
What was the reasoning? I just want to know, because to me, when I think of sales, we talked about broadcasting being a little bit cutthroat, but it's like super like that. That's the way I picture it.
Sales,
because obviously people listen to you and you're like, this dude's a go-getter. He's putting his name out there. He's emailing people. He's following up with it. So, and that to me, I would think perfect for sales.
in a way, okay, let me refresh it. I was good at it.
Right.
I could
sure.
do the job.
Yeah.
I just hated the job.
Gotcha.
I didn't like the lifestyle. I didn't like whenever you walked in the door, everybody looked at you and go, oh, God, the salesperson. I didn't like it. Like, it wasn't what I wanted to do.
That makes perfect sense, because where you were talking about earlier, you have to be entertaining. Like, you're the entertainer. When I see you, I'm like, it's Eric. He's hilarious. He's entertaining and all these things. So you didn't like it. It makes sense.
Yeah, and I was trying to portray somebody that honestly I didn't like. I mean, I'm trying to wear ties and nice shirts and nice suits and cufflinks and nice watches. Like, dude, that's not me. I'm the bearded, half sloppy looking guy that can look nice when he wants to.
I get it. You're you.
Yeah,
You're you.
mean,
you're changing yourself.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And I just didn't like that. And I felt like that's what I had to do. And like my supervisor said, like, no, you don't have to do that. Just be yourself. Just be, clean. Like, yeah, I'm clean. I don't have to worry about that.
He doesn't stink.
Yeah.
I can attest.
But I don't know. I didn't like that way of going about life. It seemed like, everything you did was to make more money. And I wasn't in it to make more money. I was in it to really enjoy life.
Right.
And what I had a passion for, I just have a passion for sales. And I just it didn't jive well with me and my personality. I mean, my personality, I guess, kind of, but what I wanted, it didn't jive with. And that's why after about 2 or 3 months into it, what they didn't know was at the time, I was moonlighting and working with University of Cumberland as their PA guy. So every other weekend I was driving down to do PA for football. I was working at another cluster of radio stations in Mount Sterling doing production work for high school football and basketball. And I was going to Transylvania University and doing play-by-play for men's and women's basketball all at the same time.
Hustling hard.
Exactly. And eventually they found out that I was doing all these side gigs. And they're like, well, we don't want him to leave because he is bringing in money. Like I said, I could do the job.
Right.
Like, he's bringing in money. He's kind of a go-getter. We don't want him to leave when these other things happen. So they came to me and said, we got an on-air job for you. I was like, cool, I'll take it. And I started doing Sunday morning talk show on ESPN. I was completely cool with that, but I want to do more. I always had a passion for high school sports. I'm a play-by-play guy.
Right.
That's what I am. And so I pitched an idea. They brought in a new general manager. I sat there and talked to him, and I had a proposal in my back pocket. If he ever asked me, what do you want to do? I had it ready. And he asked me that question. I put a 15-page proposal down for him. High school sports. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's the game plan. Here's how we sell. Here's how we make money. Here's a 10-year timeline.
It's amazing.
And I did that, and that started kind of the successful period I had in Lexington, where I was doing Sunday morning talk show. I was doing high school basketball and high school football. I was doing UK football pre- and post-game shows. I was doing all these different things, and I did it for about 1.5 years. And things changed. And I won't go into great detail, but I had a contract dispute. I didn't want to do sales anymore, and I made it be known, if you want me to do sales, I'm going to do this one thing, and that's it. Everything else, I want to be involved with radio and the station and all the other stuff, not all the other nonsense that I had no interest in. And they basically told me, no.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. And they're like, be happy with what you got and, do what we tell you to do. Which, that's kind of the wrong thing to tell me.
Right.
So I got mad and I swallowed my pride and just said, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. But when that moment happened and we had those issues, I was like, if I have an opportunity, I'm out. And I started saving. I started getting ready. And here comes some more stuff that you don't know, and which I'm going to be interested to see what your reaction is when I tell you what I'm going to go into. So I'm doing all that stuff. I'm saving every dollar I have, and I'm just putting it back. We get to the turn of the new year. I'm trying to remember what year this was. I want to say it was 2015. I think it was. It was the turn of the new year, 2015. I got into an argument in a sales meeting in January. 2 weeks prior to this, when I got off the air one Sunday morning, I drove up to watch a basketball game between Northern Kentucky University and West Virginia. Bob Huggins in town, I'm a-going. So I went up there, and I'd already kind of been thinking about getting out of broadcasting and going into college athletics. And I went up there, and I see a guy walking around taking pictures in a suit and tie. I'm like, he's important. And so I went out my way and I went to go talk to him. And his name's Mike Anderson. And I told Mike, hey, I'm interested in getting into this. What do you think I should do? And he kind of told me, and I'm like, dude, I'm already doing that. I'm already involved at Transylvania. I'm already involved with the Cumberlands. I've done this. I've done that.
So you're still doing all that stuff on the side
Yeah.
in addition to
Yeah.
salesperson, high school basketball, high school football.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
And Mike's like, well, you're doing everything right. He goes, why don't you just stay in contact with me? You never know. We may have something opened up internship-wise. You get some, start doing some stuff here. Like, perfect. I call, email, never really got back to me. And like I said, this is right around before Christmas of 2014, going to 2015. I go to that sales meeting. I get into an argument. And I'm like, I'm done, guys. This is stupid.
Yeah.
And I walked out of work that day. I'm still employed. Like, I didn't do that. I hadn't stepped down or anything. And I said, the hell with it. And January 3rd, it's 2 degrees outside. I get in my Trailblazer. I drive my ass up to Northern Kentucky. And I find Mike's office, unannounced, walk in, sit down, look at him, and I go, give me something. And he just looked at me. Kind of like,
Didn't know what to say.
he didn't know what to do. He's like, good to see you too. And he was like,
What's been up?
pretty much. And I was like, Mike, I need an opportunity. You're the guy that can do it. Give me something. I want to be here. I want to work. I want to help. I want to learn. He's like, well, I don't know what we can do for you, but you can start coming to the men's, women's basketball games, a couple times for the rest of the year and learn. I said, tell you what, I'll be here every single home game for the remainder of the season. Give me whatever you want. I don't care. And that's what I did. I started driving whenever they had games. I would leave work early, didn't tell anybody, and would go up there, and I just kind of started learning. And I drove Mike and the 2 other guys that he worked with that were his superiors, Brad and Brian, and I started driving them nuts. Asked them questions. What do you think I should do? I want to get into this. And everybody pretty much said, if you're going to do this, jump in with both feet. It's like, okay, that's what I'll do. So I went back to the radio gig and I said, here's my proposal. Either we reach an agreement by March or I'm gone. And the owner of the company kind of looked at me and was like, what are you going to do? This is you. This is who you are. What are you going to do? If you leave, you're going to come right back.
Right.
Nah, I'm not. And he said, well, what are you planning on doing? I said, I'm going to college athletics. You have no experience in that. Why would you go do that? Like, okay. And for 2 months, we kept going back and forth in the contract discussion, and I didn't get anywhere near what I wanted or thought I should be at. And so the last game I called for ESPN Radio Lexington was like March 14th on a Tuesday, and my last day was like March 17th. And I walked away. And I went and I was interning and volunteering at Northern Kentucky, which led me to the exact same thing at Wright State up in Dayton, Ohio. Eastern Kentucky, where I already had contacts with, and University of Cincinnati.
Wow.
So
So you're just driving back and forth to all these?
So from March
I hope
to...
you got something other than Trailblazer. That sounds like a lot of gas.
I'm getting to it. But those 4 schools from March to the start of June, I just bounced around. And I was sleeping in my car. I had enough money to just get by. And if we had doubleheader baseball and like it was a night game into a day game, I would go to a hotel parking lot and I would park the Trailblazer, sleep in the back. And I would go shower at gas stations. I was eating whatever I could to get by and whatever free food I can get at the events and just figuring it out. And I had no income, had nothing. And just trying to find an opportunity. And I did it for as long as I could. And there was a graduate assistant position opened. I had to go back to school to get my master's degree at Northern Kentucky. I applied for it. Didn't get it. Brian, the director, sat down with me and basically ripped me to shreds on my resume, my cover letter, all this other stuff. And says, we're not going to hire you. But here's the reason why I'm ripping you. And he broke everything down. And it was one of the most eye-opening conversations I ever had in the business up to this point. And I said, okay. And it's like, if I need anything, can I call you? He's like, I want you to call me. But I can't give you an opportunity, but I will help you find one. Like, okay. So I kind of tucked my tail between my legs and went back home. Like, I don't know what to do. And I applied for a couple of graduate positions at East Tennessee State and Morehead State. Both of them eventually offered. And at the very last second, Morehead offered a day after East Tennessee State did, but East Tennessee State retracted their offer and found someone else to put in the position that the guy originally wasn't going to go for, but someone above him wanted. So that got pulled away. I called up Morehead. Hey, let's do this. So at the ripe age of 28 and 6 years removed from a degree from Western, I went back to school at Morehead. And I was working on a master's in sports management, and I was a graduate assistant making very little money, living in Morehead and working in media relations at the university. And so it all kind of worked out for the most part.
Right. Well, a lot of people would have been deterred or defeated a long time before this. I mean, to me, kind of hearing your story and not knowing a lot of this, I mean, it has all of the landmines that everybody faces. You have an injury, you have to take medication. A lot of times that medication completely derails somebody. You come back from that, and then you go and you're telling me that broadcasting is what you're meant for. You get in that, but it's not exactly what you want. You fight for what you want. You don't get it. Most people would quit again. You keep on going. You sleep in your car. I mean, it's amazing all the things that you have overcome to get where you are now. And, we're still a long way from where you are now. Yeah. So we'll continue back to the story.
Let me tie up a few more loose ends here. I was getting out of broadcasting, but if you remember back at the EKU stint, I got my first taste of it.
Right.
And so that's why I decided to walk away from something that I really enjoyed doing, and broadcasting, calling games, doing talk radio, was because I saw the writing on the wall. I'm doing all these different things, trying my best to succeed in sales and broadcasting, and I saw the writing on the wall. And so it wasn't like, I'm mad, I'm going to show you. It was, I'm mad, but in 20 years, I don't want this to keep happening. I need to make an adult decision to not let them make the decision for me. I want to work in college athletics at some point. I don't have to do broadcasting. I just want to be involved in it because I like that part of it. I love college athletics. I like being around the kids. I like just being on the road. I like doing that. I like that lifestyle. And I got that from EKU. So even though I left something that I really enjoyed, it was for the greater good of being a part of a life I would enjoy better.
Right.
And thought that it had more stability, thought that it had a brighter future, and that's why I made the move.
But it also makes you more dynamic because now you have the broadcasting and
The sales
Yeah.
and go work on the
you
education.
can pretty much do anything that you want within that. So if an opportunity comes up, obviously, you have it now. Where before you just had the broadcasting part, and you've made yourself so much more dynamic and padded that resume in so much more.
You and I are on the same wavelength on that, and that's kind of why I did it the way I did it. Then, so I'm at Moorhead, and I was there for a year. I loved it there. Great people, great atmosphere. I learned so much. When I was applying for jobs, like, this isn't that hard. Like, this, I'm in broadcasting. This is media relations. They're just catering to somebody like me. Like, that, how hard is that? Then you get involved in it going, oh, I didn't realize how much went into this. And so, like, it was a really good learning point. And it was really good for me personally and good for me career-wise because I took so much from it being at Moorhead, and I never thought I'd say that.
Well, so me looking in from the outside, I'm thinking, well, he already told me how much he goes into preparation of his broadcast, so I would think that you could use what you've learned from that to prep for the media relations stuff too. Am I right? Because I don't know exactly what all goes into it, but I would assume it's a lot of statistics, things like that. Am I wrong? Am I off base?
Right and wrong. The prepping stuff I did is probably about 20% of the actual media relations job. You're still doing everything else when it comes to social media. You're learning how to design website and how to make that website function. You're learning how to be a graphic designer for social media graphics. You're learning how to work with a marketing office for this idea. You're trying to, cater yourself to a coach and to players to make sure that they're put in a positive light. You're doing all these different things. So that part of it was only a small part of it, but I didn't realize all this other stuff was behind the curtain.
Yeah, and I didn't either. So
Most people don't.
Yeah.
And so once you start looking at it going, whoa, this wasn't what I thought, but this is fun. Like, this is kind of fun to be a part of and cool to be a part of. And that's what I learned at Moorhead. Because when I was at Northern, Cincinnati, Wright State, like, I was getting a little peek, but I wasn't fully in the day-to-day. There, I'm in the day-to-day. It's me and two other guys and a few interns working to make a game happen and to make coverage happen. And I had some great teachers there, instructors that took me under the wing, said, we're going to make you a better writer, we're going to make you a better graphic designer, we're going to do all these different things for you. And that's what happened. And I'm there for a year. And I remember when I was there, I always talked about, because whenever you're around other people that are working on their master's degree or just people in general that's at a smaller school, they talk about where they want to end up, where they want to be at this position, that position, this school, or whatever it wants to parlay into. I always talked about there's 3 schools that I'd want to get to. I talked about position, but there were 3 schools. Back in my alma mater, WKU, University of Cincinnati, because I'd already been there, I loved it there, and I like the city, and I'm a huge Bengals and Reds fan, and just that part of it, and the University of Hawaii. And I always talked about those 3 schools all the time about getting there. And I remember I had an assignment during the spring semester of my year at Moorhead, and the assignment was find somebody in your profession to network with at a place that you would want to go. And I'm like, I've already done that. Sure. So I was like, because most people, because when you're in that program, you're usually around people who are in their early 20s. I'm in my late 20s. And so I was like, they're talking to the director at Moorhead or the director at Eastern or whatever else. I'm like, I'm going to talk to the director at Hawaii just because. So I did. I emailed him for 3 or 4 weeks, trying to get him to talk to me. He said, sure, I'll talk to you. And next thing I know, I'm on the phone with him. And we're going back and forth. I do the process. I interview him and everything else, and for the paper that I got to write. And then we got talking. And I said, if I ever got to the island, if I ever got out there, would you want to sit down in person? He's like, yeah, sure. You seem like you know a lot about the program. And I told him I was a fan of Hawaii and everything else, and which I can go into that in a minute too. But I got talking about it. I was like, if I ever get out there, would you want to sit down and chat? And he's like, sure. I was like, cool. I'll see you in 6 weeks. And that's what
he probably didn't know what to think.
He didn't know what to do. And he was like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, I'm going to be out there in 6 weeks. He's like, yeah, if you end up being here, come see
If
me.
you didn't show up in your Colt Brennan for Heisman shirt, I would be so mad.
You laugh. I have a Colt Brennan jersey still.
Yeah.
And
I was a huge Colt Brennan for Heisman. Whenever the NCAA games came out, the Heisman, always Colt Brennan.
oh, Colt Brennan, day and night. June Jones, my boy. Devon Best was underappreciated in the NFL. I'm a huge Hawaii football fan. And I told him that, and we talked about that for a little while because he was there. He was the director. He knows Colt and June Jones, all those cats.
All those dudes.
And so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be there in 6 weeks. And he's like, well, come in here then. Let me know when you're here, and then we'll sit down and chat. So 6 weeks later, the school year was over. Me and my buddy got on a plane, flew to Hawaii. And I always wanted to go there. I always wanted to visit. Always wanted to see what it was like. And we got out there, and I'm there for like 2 days, and then I go meet him. His name's Derek, and Derek and I sit down, and we had about an hour-long chat. Show me around. We talked about just the business. And as we got talking, he had said that they're trying to fill an intern position and a full-time position, but the full-time position looked like it's about ready to get taken over. And I was like, well, I'll be honest with you. I'm interested in that intern position. Anything we can do about that? And he's like, well, if you want it, we can have a serious conversation, but I don't want you to do that. I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, let's just say it happened. Financially, it'd kill you. Like you would be miserable. Like you would have no money. You don't know anybody here. You'd be in a rough spot.
Right.
And I was like, thank you for the honesty, but let's stay in conversation. Let's keep talking. He's like, cool, no problem. So, enjoy the rest of my Hawaii trip. Came back. I'm back in Kentucky. I'm back in Moorhead. I'm working at a radio station in Moorhead just to make a little extra cash. And just writing news and doing news stories. Didn't like doing that.
Just news in general?
Just news. Didn't really like doing that all that much, but hey, it's something I already knew. It wasn't too hard to do. It was a little bit of extra cash, like I said. And I got a call from KSU, Kentucky State. And the athletic director at the time said, are you interested in coming here and work full time? Because when I was in Moorhead, I was coming over and help them out, do stats, and a few other things for some basketball games during that semester when I had the opportunity. And he asked if I was interested, and I said, no, not at all. And he was like, I'm calling in a couple of days, see if you change your mind. But the reason why was because at the time, KSU was threatening to shut down.
Yeah.
Was a president come in, they were really in debt, a lot of problems, and they put this story out that they may shut down, which when you're in your 20s and you still got another year left at Moorhead and work on your master's degree, you're like, I'm not taking that risk.
Right.
And so that was the reason why I kind of told him, like, no, I'm not interested. He called me out after a couple of days and said, are you still not interested? And I said, if you want to talk, I'll talk. So my thought was, I'm just going to do this just to get the experience at another place.
Makes sense.
Another director, just to kind of, I have another year of school left, just to kind of, see how this works. So I did it. And I thought there's 5 things that they would have to say yes to for me to consider it. And I went into the process. I fully went at it like you would any other job that you would want. And surprisingly, about the second time we spoke and I gave him my 5 things, he said yes to everything. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wasn't necessarily the answer you were expecting.
It wasn't. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll take a couple of days, and let me know what happens. And he calls me up and he doesn't offer me the job. He doesn't say, hey, take time to think about it. He goes, you're our guy. We'll see you tomorrow. Or 2 days. It was 2 days. He called me on a Friday. So we'll see you in 2 days.
Sounds like he's had a little sales.
Exactly. And I hung up the phone and I was like, well, I guess I'm the director at KSU now. But think about that. I am 1 year into my degree. I'm a GA. And now I'm a director.
Yeah.
At Division II school.
It's crazy.
I'm one of 5 or 4 people in the administration office.
Pretty big leap.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I am, and just being honest here, and I don't think this is going to ruffle any feathers, but I'm a white guy coming from Moorhead, a mountain school that's predominantly white. Right. Going into a culture that is very vast and where their concern was, am I going to fit in?
Right.
That was brought up during the interview. And I remember the young lady who asked me that question go, "This is a very diverse university. You're coming from a mountain school and you're obviously Caucasian. Do you think it's going to be a adjustment for you?" And you know me, and this answer won't surprise you. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm currently sitting here with my shirt and tie and my jacket on. Underneath this, for good luck, I'm wearing a Wu-Tang shirt."
That's perfect.
I don't think it's going to be an issue. And it wasn't.
Right.
I loved my time there. I really enjoyed the culture, the people, and every part of that. Because to me, it didn't matter. I never thought about it. It was never an issue for me.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a pretty big misconception.
it is.
You know, especially when people around athletics. You know, I grew up in the country, and you know, it's predominantly white, but you know, the second you step in that locker room, you know, it's obviously very diverse, and you become really close to people.
Yeah.
You get used to their culture, and I'm sure that you had to experience the same type of things growing up.
Exactly. And so once I kind of got there and everybody kind of met me after 5 minutes, like, "Oh, this dude's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
He's cool. It's all right. It's all right." And that's how it was. For the
Right.
year and a half I was there, it was fine. But unfortunately, the AD who hired me, a week into my job, he got fired.
Oh gosh.
So I'm walking into the situation. The one confidant I have is now gone. I didn't really know him that well, but still, he was the one
Still on your side.
He's still on my side. And so I'm walking, and when I say I took over a situation that had basically not existed, like seriously, it hadn't existed. It had been 8 months and there was somebody in my position.
Wow.
So I had to try to build it from the ground up. And remind you, I've only been doing this for a little over a year.
Right.
But I had good teachers at Moorhead, and I just did what I could for the year and a half I was there. I did what I could to make a difference, and I love the people that were there. That I worked with, and we did a lot of really cool things. And where I already had ties to the media in Lexington because of what I did before, we were getting them to come out there. We were getting them to take notice. Where John L. Smith is the head football coach there, former head coach at Louisville and Michigan State and Arkansas. That brought some attention there. And we tried to change some things and do some really good things. And to give love to KSU that probably hadn't had it in a long
Right.
time. And
There's a lot of trial by fire, like
a lot of it. Lots of it.
Trial. I'm sure there's a lot of trial and error, but I mean, obviously, it helped you because you're coming into a not great situation. You didn't have a lot of experience, but you know, to be thrown in the fire right away and to come out of it, there's something to be said about that.
And that's because of the people that were there. There were a lot of good people there. Everywhere I've been, there's good people. KSU, there was a lot of determined, young professionals that wanted to make a difference, that wanted to do something good. And I think the university as a whole wanted to do something good. And there is a lot of that. But at the same time, when you're at a university that doesn't have a whole lot of funding, that has some limitations when it comes to direction and so much turnover and all those other things, you're going to face those issues. And after a while, I mean, it does weigh on you.
Right.
But at the same time, you value what you did. You value the people that you worked with, and I had a lot of fun there.
Sure, it kind of grouped you all together too and made you more determined than ever.
Very much so. And there was one underlying factor that all of us had a distaste for that I think brought us all together, that made us all try to be better and made us all a lot closer and to work toward a common goal. But after a while, that one underlying factor ended up being the decision of where we're at right now. And after a year and a half, I had still kept in contact with the director at University of Hawaii. And we go into the Christmas winter break, and I'm hanging out at my parents' house because I just came in for the holidays and was just kind of just relaxing. And I get an email, and it's Derek from Hawaii. And it's like, "Hey, happy holidays. Hope you're doing well. Got a spot. You interested?" Now, mind you, Derek and I kept in conversation probably once or twice a month. Just, "Hey, I have an idea. What's your thoughts? Hey, I'm doing this. What are your thoughts?" And we just kept doing that. Handwritten letters, emails, just doing something to stay in contact. And when an opportunity came up, because I networked with him, I went and saw him, and I kept in contact, he thought of me and said, hey, I got a spot for you. You interested? Yeah. And so...
Did you have to, like, wait a second before you responded just so he didn't think you were overzealous?
Well, the smartest thing that I could have done was what I did, and I called the director I worked for at Moorhead. And, I mean, you know me. I'm a passionate dude, and I am full force majority of the time. And so when this happens, like, I'm sitting there like...
Don't know what to do.
What do I do with my hands?
Yeah, what do I do?
And so I called up my former director, Nick, and I said, dude, this is happening. And I told him everything. He was like, here's what you do. You know, type the email, send it to me, let me proof it for you, and then send it.
It's great to have somebody like that.
Oh, it was phenomenal. And that's what I did. And I said in the email, hey, can we talk the next day or two? I'm really interested. We got talking. He's like, you know, keep an eye out for the posting. Here's the situation, da-da. And so we had that conversation, and then I put in for it. I had an interview with him and his staff on the phone, and it took about a 3-week process, and they called me and said, it's yours.
That's awesome.
If you want it.
Were you sitting on pins and needles for 3 weeks?
We're going to take a quick break. The battery's about to go out.
Okay.